Welcome to the Joyfulicity podcast. I'm your host, Laura Wakefield, and my guest today is Danny Rongo, otherwise known to his friends and followers affectionately as That Oneness Guy. I met Danny on Instagram a long time ago now, a couple of years ago now, I think, and he is just such a delightful guy. He is an all-around he just does everything. He's a podcaster, an author, a public speaker, a singer-songwriter, a playwright. Just he does it all. And it's been hard this morning actually to decide which things to focus on talking with him about. But Danny has the distinction of being the very first person to ever invite me on to be a podcast guest. And that gave me the confidence to start really seriously thinking about really getting started on my own podcast. So I'm just honored and thrilled to have Danny on as my guest today. Welcome, Danny.
Oh, Laura, thank you so much. It's a treat. It's a pleasure. I enjoyed our first conversation immensely, and I know this is going to be a good follow-up.
Absolutely. So Danny's main theme in all of the endeavors that he does is a concept called oneness that he originally encountered through Wayne Dyer, who I also love and follow. Danny, when you say oneness, what does that mean to you? Because a lot of people talk about oneness, but what does that mean in
Yeah.
your definition?
Well, like what I've seen over the years, Laura, is that oneness to most people means a bond, but from a physical perspective. People mean they say, "Well, I understand the fact that I'm a human being, and you're a human being, so we should respect each other." And I applaud that. To me, that's fine. And if people want to leave it at that, I'm fine with that. But I've always tried to also tie in this spiritual perspective because obviously we're not just here as physical beings. Obviously, there's the spiritual lessons that we emanate from as well too. So when I talk about oneness, I try to steer towards that because we emanate from one source. You can call that source God, which is probably the most identifiable. You can call it spirit, essence, whatever. To me, it does not matter what you call it because when you name something to me, you negate something. So I like to say God or spirit or soul, which is fine, but I like people to get to the concept that whatever you happen to call that source, you come from that. You're an extension of that source. Just like branches on a tree, just like waves in the ocean, we're all part of it. So when we live from that premise that we're here as these physical beings and as these spiritual beings, but that we emanated from this same source, to me, that helps to solidify the bond aspect of oneness. Like, hey, we are kind of related. And it's not just the fact that we're human beings, it's that we came from the same source. So
Interesting.
to me, like over the decades, it's been more of a battle to try and relay that whole concept of the spiritual side of oneness, but it's been worth it for me because that's what I've been focusing on through my last couple of books and through some of these things that I talk about on my podcasts and blogs and stuff like that. But it's important for me to try to relay that thought, that process, that we come from a source. Keep it over here if you may. And we're all from that. Like I said, branches on a tree is probably the best way to make like a visual per se for like people to understand. But it's important, man, because we've grown so far away from that knowing, Laura. I don't have to explain it to you, but just through time, there's been such a divisiveness, so much separateness,
Yeah.
and it all stems from our ego that we're not from this one source, that we are all different. That because I was born on this side of the planet, I'm definitely different from you, even though we're still human beings. I'm definitely different from you. So they put up these walls that just happen naturally, but they're all ego driven. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and it's gotten worse and worse and worse over time. Um, I like feel that we're kind of hit a point, if you want to call it. I like to call it since COVID, since the lockdown. I think that actually represented a really good clarity for humanity, if you may, because that forced a lot of people, because we were shut down, right? Everything was in a lockdown. So it forced us to take deeper looks at ourselves to our advantage, I might add too, because, when like people are shutting by themselves, what do? Right? You have to start to question.
You do a lot
And
of thinking, right?
Right, exactly. So I think that was a very pivotal point in the year 2020, and which may have, I'm still hoping, but it may have just turned that corner to make us lead more of our collective consciousness into more of a spiritual base. Because I've always said with oneness that this world, people say, oh, it's such a horrible world, and it's our own fault. People like to point fingers at even their God and say, how would God allow this? First of all, God's got nothing to do with it. Your spirit, your entity is here of free will. There's no interjection here. So, to think that someone's going to come in and save us, that ain't the case. Or some entity's going to save us, that's not going to happen. We are here free will. But like I said, to be able to see that turning point is so important. And I'm just really hoping that it's all leaning that, because we're just the sum of a collective consciousness. And that's why the world seems so kind of crazy.
Yeah, well, and I really love that, because in the world, there's so many different benchmarks and defining things that we use to show how we're different. Right. Like you said, where we were born, our gender, our religion, the color of our skin, our sexuality, all these different things. Oh, we're different than that person. They're different than us.
Oh, yeah.
And I love the concept that no, those are just simply details that really, in essence, we're the same. We come from the same source.
And it's the irony too about it, Laura, isn't the truth? Because on the other side, we're all one. We're all oneness. There is no separation. But it's the irony, yet it's the beauty of it, that as soon as we incarnate into here, what happens? We go from a oneness to a duality. We go from oneness, we go to contrast. What does that mean? Over there is no good and bad, up and down, right or wrong, left and right. It's all one. But here, we're forced into this contrast for the very reason that being forced into that is what's going to make us come to realize at some point in this lifetime, oh, I am from a source of one. I am oneness. That's the whole key to life, for us to remember, or I like to separate the word remember, RE-member. We need to remember.
Oh, I love that
concept that we're oneness. And that's all it is. And to do that, you have to be forced into what oneness is not. For us to realize what we are, we have to experience what we are not. Mm-hmm. So the only reason why for us to fully experience oneness, Laura, is for us to come here to experience what oneness is not. Mm-hmm. And that's what a lot of people don't get, that we're here. That's the biggest reason for us to realize.
Interesting thought. I've never heard it said quite like that.
Yeah. Think about it, because it makes perfect sense. Obviously everything over there, we could be floating around going, woo, everything is great, right? We don't know the difference. So we choose. I fully believe that over there, we choose everything. We look at the possibilities from who our parents are going to be to what trials and tribulations we're going to encounter here. And we put it in place. We kind of make up like a script, a diagram. That's why I fully believe that this whole life is but a dream, like the song says. It really is, because we actually put it in place. We wrote everything out on the side and we said, let's do this. That's what also makes me truly be amazed at the people who I believe choose to come here with physical handicaps.
Yeah.
Because they're looking at it from the other side and say, I can deal with that. I can do that over there. So they put it in place. They pick their parents and they say, let's rock. let's do this. So you want to talk about angels and you want to talk about gifted people. That's why I've always had that special thing for people who share, who have physical handicaps, especially that. And it's just, it's because all of us say, man, what a hard way to go through life.
Yes, in fact, it's funny that you say that. I was watching a television show last night that featured a guy that was in a wheelchair. He'd been in a car accident when he was about 17 or 18 and was put into a wheelchair. And he has gone on to, through a lot of difficulty. It didn't just happen like that, but now he really motivates and inspires a lot of other people in the same circumstance. And it's amazing to me, those people that take their challenges and find a way to use them to bless and inspire and help other people. That's I can't even express how much I admire somebody like that they don't just stay stuck in it. Of course they go through the grief and the pain and the anger and all the other things, but they find a way out on the other side to use whatever challenge they're facing for good. And that's just, I think that, in my opinion, that is just kind of what you're talking about, of rediscovering what we're here for. Even, why are we even going through this? So what made you decide originally, hey, I really have all these beliefs, I want to go and share them with other people?
How much time we got? With me, Laura, it's something that I grew into very organically. Because I may have told you, like, back on our first podcast together, that like, I'm a musician by trade and a singer-songwriter. And back when I was, like, in my late teens and early 20s is when it started to ramp up, when I started to perform more. I got record deals and I started to, I was more of a lyricist at that time. And I was always coming across, especially lyrics, that had this commonality through them of a bonding, of unifying, I guess, right? And so, like, I was in these, like, rock bands and stuff like that. And, like, I'm writing these, like, for these almost heavy metal songs, and these lyrics have these kind of bondings. Like, and the guys in my band were always cool about it. They're like, damn, like, you're kind of, like, on this, like, trend here, man, of, like, getting everybody together. So what's up with that, dude? And I was like,
heavy metal spirituality. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But so I said, I'm just going to go with it. So I kept writing. And then, like, when I started to write my own songs, it took on a whole, like, other level. And, like, it started to get deeper. Now, this is at, like, about the time, because I first found Dr. Dyer through a friend of mine back in 1976 when we were sophomores in high school. And that was when his first book came out, Your Erroneous Zones. And so for some reason, he just worked with me, and I've read everything that he's ever written since then. But like, for some reason or another, because Wayne really wasn't even talking about bonding and oneness or something similar along those lines back then. He was just talking about finding a spirituality, finding an essence, if you may. But that's when my lyrics started to ramp up even more about this. So from there, it took me through countless bands, countless opportunities. I started writing poetry about it, and more. And then it took me into, like, my adulthood, 30s, still doing the same thing, writing and writing. And then, like, it was probably, like, around, like, when I hit my 30s, which was in the early 90s. I was born in 61. So somewhere like 1991 is when I first heard the concept of oneness. And I was like, similar, right? Right. So, like, I started saying, yeah. So I was like, this is something maybe I can hang my hat on. Now, granted, I never claimed to be the first person talking about oneness. It has been talked about for centuries, and it's still talked about by thousands and thousands of people and messengers. But I said, wow, this is something that I can, use as my foundation.
Sure.
And the foundation is very cool, especially for me, because I'm a bass player. So you got to have that bottom, Laura. You got to have that bottom end, right? You got to have this. So to me, that was my rock of the foundation, was oneness. So I kind of hung my hat on it. And then, fast forward through all the times, sharing it more and more. And it wasn't until Wow, just latter part of 2016, which was very pivotal for me because that's when I got laid off from my job at Wall Street. Had to do a whole other like search inside. All right, something I did for 30 years. Now I'm not doing it no more. Now what?
Now what? Yeah. Now what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, so I had to do some soul searching there. And that's when I started getting more and more messages about, all right, surrender, which became a topic and later a song. Terms like acceptance, which became a topic and a headline and a song for me. And, it was at the same time when my stepdaughter, actually, she put it to me. She goes, you got all these messages now and you got your song. She goes, why don't you put it down like into, some kind of musical theatrical production. And that's when I actually wrote, it's called The Phone Call, a musical to inspire oneness, which was just me. It was me, microphone, my iPad, and my acoustic bass guitar. And I wrote this play around it that I was having a FaceTime call with a friend of mine who was searching for his own spirituality. So he gives me this FaceTime call, which is on the iPad right in front of me. So I go through this whole dialogue. That was the premise of the play, that I have this dialogue with my friend who wants to learn a little bit about oneness. So as I'm going through concepts, I would say, and listen, here's an easy way for me to describe this topic. Put my bass on my shoulders, sing a song. And so the play was about a good like 90 minutes.
Oh.
And man, you talk about rehearsals, Laura.
Just you on stage by yourself for 90 minutes. That's something.
Yeah. And again, because now I was technically unemployed because I haven't been working. So I spent day after day, night after night, just in my, then home, like in my office, just rehearsing this. So then I started going around to the local theaters here in New Jersey, and I was blessed to perform at about maybe a dozen of them, to some good reviews. I started to see some people in the seats. And then, through the United Solo, if I'm calling it correctly, which is a organization in New York, I was able to perform it on Broadway.
And, I didn't realize you had taken it to Broadway. Yeah. Wow.
It was on Broadway. I was able to do a show of it on Broadway, and a lot of family and friends showed up. And it was awesome. I loved it. I have I have some really nice video of it, which I use in a lot of my postings and stuff. But that was awesome. And from that, right after that is when my mom became really ill. And then she passed in January of 2018.
I'm sorry.
And it's cool, I remember hearing in my head, very shortly after she passed, I was like, Mom, where do I take this now? I said, because I had this play. I was blessed enough to perform on Broadway. I go, Mom, where to now? Which happens to be a song of mine called Where to Now. And I heard her in my head. Laura, she always called me Daniel's son. Daniel's son, you need to write a book. And I was like, all right, Mom, I got it. So it was from then that I wrote my first book, which is called I Am God, and So Are You, My Friend, A Common Man's Guide to Oneness. And, like when I was thinking about the title of it, I was struggling with it. I said, I'm going to catch a lot of flack from this title, man. And I just know it. Again, getting back to the separation, Laura.
Right.
Because when you say I am God to any stout Catholic,
that's blasphemy. I mean, that's heavy.
Blasphemy.
Yeah.
And, I said, you know what? I'm going to go out with it because this is what it's about. And I am God. I am an aspect of God, just like I spoke about. I'm the branch on the tree of God. So yes, I am God. You are God. Everyone listen out there. You're a divine replication of your source, whatever you might call it. So I wrote that book. And from there, it just started to pick up pace and more, and book signings and some shows. And it hasn't stopped. And it kind of led me to 2020, getting back to that now infamous time in history.
Yeah. Remember when that started and we all thought it would be over in 2 weeks?
Oh, yeah. 2 weeks.
No.
Yeah. But I took the lockdown to write, and because I sensed the fear, Laura, like there was so much fear, and I felt it myself. I'm like, this is not cool. Like, how am I going to get myself through this?
Right.
I said, Dan, so, I was shut down because at the time is when I started working as my second career, which is as a paraprofessional, which I love, by the way. I love it. And I've been doing it ever since. So school was shut down. So I was home. So I was just writing, and it was going to be just a blog about how I got myself through the pandemic in the eyes of oneness, if you may.
Sure.
And so I wrote it, and and I was looking at it, I was like, this is very beneficial. I said, so aside from going out with just this about how to kind of navigate, because that's what I was looking for, Laura. How am I going to navigate through this turmoil, through all this shit going on?
Totally unprecedented in the lives of people who are alive right now. Like we'd never done anything like that.
No, it was all, obviously unprecedented. So I was like, how am I going to get through this? So I wrote it, and I said, this is a really good way to navigate through any kind of pandemic. And then I started to do some research about how many pandemics did we have in history. And then I started to look up facts. Basically, something like this came across 1 out of every 15 years over the last couple of 100 years, whether we know it or not.
So maybe not so unprecedented. We just
exactly. We just feel it. Why? Because media blew it up. So then, as I was pondering that, I was like, why don't I try and piece together, like a way to navigate through some of the most intricate and delicate moments of life: love, health, money, fear, ego, duality, contrast, blah, 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 blah. So I came across with about 12 really good ones. And then I said, I got something here. So I started writing. I dated, my first journal was, I think, March 20th of 2020. And then on the last journal, it was like August 15th of 2020. So I wrote for 6 months solid. And then I had it. So then I started putting it together, and that's what actually became the book that I am now going to be releasing finally in a print copy, is The Ways of Oneness, Helping to Navigate Life, which I conceived under the blanket of a global pandemic.
And I love that, because all those lessons can be applied to almost any challenge that you're facing, not just to a pandemic, but other things that you go through in your life. And everybody will go through something.
Absolutely.
They won't all be the same, but we will all have our challenges, and we will all have significant ones of different kinds.
Yeah.
Well, and that brings me, well, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that there's a common thread through it all, because any way that we look to navigate through any aspect of life, good, bad, hard, difficult, whatever, it's always going to come down to that we're blessed to make choices. So how we look at things, again, it's not the circumstances that define our life. It's rather our attitude towards those circumstances that define our life. And our attitude towards those circumstances all come from the way we choose to view those circumstances. So everything still comes back to choices.
And you are such a good example of that, because that's what I was going to just ask you a minute ago. Danny was originally supposed to be one of the first guests on the show, but you've been going through your own serious challenge battling throat cancer in the last, I think for a while now. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Again, guys, how we talk about moments and defining moments. It like hit my family. Now, cancer is obviously so prevalent in today's society, but I was actually diagnosed back on September of 21, Laura, which is a couple of years ago, and scared the hell out of me, scared the hell out of my wife, Andrea, and my family. But like what we've decided to do, and it's something that I'd like to share with like all your guests, is if you're ever diagnosed with something to that nature, something that's as grim and as scary as that, take a step back. You really need to become the CEO of your life and of your health. You're going to hear so many things thrown at you, so many things that are new, so many things that are foreign to you, and so many things that are scary.
Yeah.
But I was told right away, this is going to take aggressive chemo and radiation. And, like my first thought, obviously with my wife as well, too, was like, is that all you guys got nowadays? This is 2021. I'm like, is it, but they don't say that. They just go right to their source and say, this is what you should do. You could die if you don't. I'm like, oh, it's pleasant. So I decided to really work on, all right, I wanted to become the CEO of my health. So we started to really dive into what are some of the alternative and natural methods, per se, on like how to get through cancer to any degree. And, it starts with, all right, first of all, I went totally plant-based for 7 months. I got off everything that cancer fuels off of, which means all processed foods, all sugars, anything that can break down into sugar. But from that, I started to get stronger, actually. I dropped weight because I stopped eating all the garbage. But I started to get a little healthier, a little stronger, stayed in touch with some of my doctors. I got affiliated with Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York City at this time. And I came across the guy who's still the lead on my team is Dr. David Pfister, who I found out, weirdly enough, is that he's the same doctor who saved Michael Douglas's life, the actor really? Michael Douglas, who had stage 4 throat cancer just like me.
Wow.
And so I was like, well, I got a good guy.
Right.
That's for sure, yeah. So he understood all that I was going through, and he understood why I took my own measures when I did to clean my body out, to come to some kind of, I told him about my spirituality, Laura. I told him about everything, as opposed to the 5 doctors prior to him who said, no, do it now. No, that ain't going to work. Dr. Pfister said, we can work with this. I applaud what you did. Good for you. You know what I mean?
That's rare to find. That's
because I didn't settle on that first doctor. It was
right.
The second, third, or the fourth. He was my 5th.
Wow.
And the chief of head and neck oncology in New York City from Memorial Sloan Kettering, the chief told me this, that I made the right choice. Here's what we can do. He threw a couple opportunities at me there. At the time, there was a clinical trial that worked with my form of cancer. He put that to me as a possibility. He also put out to me the possibility of coupling that with immunotherapy, to which I said, all right, fine, let's try this. So I was able to do that for the better part of, this is going back to this time last year. I was doing that, and I did it for about 4 months through, I think, May through maybe September of last year. I was like doing the immunotherapy plus the clinical trial. It came to a point last fall where, I went in for another scan, and unfortunately, it showed that the cancer moved into my bones, which was not good. And also that those treatments were, having an effectiveness on the cancer in my bones, but it was losing its effectiveness on the main part, which is my head and neck and my throat. So at that point, I was like, all right, doc, I said, what's the next move? And he says, well, from here, he goes, now we're looking at something more aggressive. And he advised a 7-week program of chemotherapy once a week and 5 days a week of radiation with 35 treatments starting in January of 23. And I was like, all right, so like to make this as short as I can, folks, I apologize, but it's my show, thanks to Laura.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you've been so good and so open and transparent on social media with sharing your journey. And I wanted, you to do that here, because I think it's inspirational to a lot of people to see how you've been coping and getting through this.
Thank you, Laura, because my whole thought about this, from the inception of it, was that I never, ever, ever said, why me? Never. Because one of the things that I mentioned briefly just a couple minutes ago was the term acceptance. And to me, acceptance means that you learn to see life through the eyes of oneness. What does that mean, Dan? It means that there is no right or wrong. Life just is. So I never questioned why I got this. I just knew that it was a part of my journey. And how we spoke about earlier, Danny boy on the other side, back before I came here, I was like, I could do cancer. I'll get through it. I'll get over it. Right? I put it in my own chart. So I did it. But I've always said from the start, I am going to share this. I do want to make it public, because people have an option. You can either keep that to yourself and your family, or you can share it. And I wanted to share it for two reasons. One was because I knew I was going to receive a boatload of love, which was off the charts, Laura, and is still off the charts. The abundance of love, joy that I received from strangers, family, friends, has been incredible. I cannot put a word on it. People have helped me. People have supported me emotionally, financially. And all I've ever said is that I have no words, just love, because I don't know how to thank people for that. I really don't. Well, that's why I signed everything that everyone ever said to me. I have no words, just love. That was the first point for me to gather that energy. We're all about energy, Laura, right? People sending me love, people praying for me on Facebook. What does that mean? It's an energy. I'm part of that energy. I want it all. I want it all. I want to heal. I want it all. That was the first part. The second point was that if my journey helps one person, just one, then it's worth it. I've known that I've helped literally hundreds already.
Oh, absolutely. I've been following your journey and have been so impressed. And a lot of the things that you say have helped me in other struggles that I've had. You know, I haven't dealt with cancer in my life personally, but I've dealt with other struggles, and a lot of your messages have been inspirational to me in handling those. And I've really appreciated watching sort of the grace and the resilience that you have brought to this whole journey.
That's so very kind for you to say that, Laura. It means the world to me. Thank you. Thank you so much. Like I said, I'm not doing it for applause. I'm trying to do it. Like I said, I want that energy to come to me. It's all about the energy. I know it's out there. I know I'm part of it. So I want it. And also, if I can help anyone, that's the jam.
I love too what you said, that cancer is not the only part of your life. It's part of your path. It's part of your journey. And you mentioned earlier, you know, a job loss and, you know, just different struggles that come to us in our lives, that it's so easy to get stuck in, why me? And this is horrible. And my whole life is horrible. But oftentimes they'll help you learn things you couldn't have learned another way, or turn a corner in your life into just like your job loss sent you on a completely different career path. Like it's hard to see when we're in the midst of a struggle what that struggle is going to bring to our lives, but your message is always to just stay in acceptance mode and sort of ride it out and see where it goes and learn what you can and share what you can. And I love that.
No, thank you. Yeah, and you know, that's where I was able to tie in what I've garnished from oneness, what I've taken in like over my lifetime through my own spiritual journey. And it is a journey, folks. It never ends. Obviously, we just keep growing and growing and growing, because everything about this whole lifetime and this whole journey is about growth, because we're constantly changing.
Right.
Constantly changing. That's part of the duality again, because on the other side, it's just oneness. But here is where everything is changes. And that always leads me back to one of my favorite quotes from Lao Tzu, who lived 600 years before Jesus, when he said that which is real never changes. So like when people think about it, like everything about this life is changing. We're growing older. Like somewhere inside me still is that little 5-year-old Danny boy. Somewhere inside you is that 5-year-old little Laura girl, you know? And but look at how we've changed. So it's changed so much from that. But that which is real never changes, meaning that our essence, your soul, which was alive and thriving before you came into this being, and will be alive and thriving when we choose to leave. And when we exit, it'll be that same energy, that same essence.
I totally, and our underlying value systems and absolute truths, you're right, they don't change. They stay the same. They just are thrown into different circumstances.
Yes.
And then we kind of roll through those. So when will this new book be coming out? The Ways of Oneness. When will that be?
Ways of Oneness. I'm going to be having that probably out over the next week or so.
Really quickly then.
Yeah.
Soon.
Oh, yeah. I'm just finalizing stuff on my pages and like on my Amazon author page, where it's going to be available on Amazon, and putting some stuff together, some, like introductory kind of posts and videos. And I just made a video trailer just the other day. So I'm getting stuff ready for like a kind of official release probably over the next week or so.
So I don't want you to give away too much from the book, because I want everybody to go and buy your book. But do you have like a little teaser sample idea for us of how, what are some sample advice from the book about how to deal with challenges and trials and life?
Yeah, well, again, because like I said, the book was written with that whole pandemic all around us at the time. So everything's getting tied back in, even though I'm talking about, life and death and family and fear and ego. And so all these, very intricate and delicate moments and aspects of life, it's getting tied back to how to navigate through it, which stemmed from how to navigate through that pandemic. And again, we're looking at choices. And we always have, like the option to take, because it's about navigation, but we have a choice to go left or right, right? So if there's any one kind of headline to like look through how to, like a navigational guide, is just like when you're coming to that fork in the road and you can either go this way or this way, you have to make that choice. So to me, the choice is easier to come by and more comfortable with us when we have more of a spiritual foundation, when we have more of a oneness foundation to life. It helps to take some of the burden off. Which way do I go? Which way do I go? You know what I mean?
Exactly, because I find myself sometimes, I have always struggled with anxiety in my life, and I'll get to a fork in the road, metaphorically, or sometimes even for real, and get paralyzed a little bit. I can't make a decision, because what if I make the wrong one? And I'm getting better at that. But I think you're right, that having that connection to spirit and getting used to knowing what that feels like.
Yeah.
Accepting that, because sometimes you're guided toward the choice that maybe isn't even the one that you wanted, or maybe it's a little scary down that road and you're not sure if you should do it.
Yeah.
So what would be your advice to someone who's stuck in paralysis mode of just being unable to make a decision?
Take some moment to or two to breathe. You know what I mean? Try to go within, try to calm yourself. Having anxious thoughts, which lead to, what you mentioned about anxiety, that's available to everyone. But, what I like to say is that there's really no anxiety out there. We're thinking anxious thoughts, which is making this kind of spin out of control. When this spins out of control, we kind of lose our essence. We kind of lose touch with what's what, which could lead to physical, abnormalities. You can lose your breath, right? You actually lose your breath. You feel a tightening like in the sit. Now that stuff's real, but it's triggered from how we're thinking. That's like something Dyer said decades ago. He actually mentioned it about, anxiety, and he coupled it with fear. He said, there is no fear in the world. There's only fearful thoughts. There is no anxiety in the world. There's only anxious thoughts. So when we get a handle on that, yeah, what I mean? It's how we're processing a thought. And unfortunately, we're letting ourselves spin out of control with it, which in turn leads to, like I said, shortness of breath, sweating, nervousness. Yeah. Laura, I get it all the time.
I
All the
love
time. I
that
have to get
because this anxiety takes on all this sense of power and control. And I love that because when you realize that doesn't actually exist at all, it's all up here.
yeah,
That means that I have the power and
yeah,
control as to how that's going to affect me and how I'm going to show up for that in my life. I love that concept that the anxiety itself doesn't exist.
yeah. No, it's all here. Ain't that cool when you think about it like that?
That's very cool. I love that concept. That's
Yeah.
going to really ponder on that one.
There'll be a
So
lot of people who will argue with you on that and say, "What do you
absolutely.
mean?" And so I'm making it up. No, you're not making up your physical ailments that you're getting from it.
Right.
You're just not controlling your anxious thoughts.
But it in and of itself actually is imaginary.
Yeah.
The way we're responding to it is very real. And
Yeah.
and maybe whatever circumstances that we're dealing with are real, that are difficult.
Of course.
Anxiety itself really isn't as powerful
Yeah.
as we let it be.
Yeah. And then, you have that choice. All right, I can let it affect me, or I can breathe, go within, try to meditate to some degree to try and face it, whatever it may be, from a different perspective. And therein lies your victory if you can face it from another angle.
Absolutely. I love that. I'm really going to give that concept some deep thought
No,
because
Laura.
it's life-changing. I do. I actually think that that is a life-changing thing if you can really learn to integrate that,
Yeah.
that you can start to feel the anxiety and then you can learn how to turn it off by
Yeah.
realizing that I'm actually in control of this.
And let me tell you and everybody else out there too, please don't think that I'm just some person who's got it all wrapped up and under control. I am the friggin' worst. My wife yells at me so much because I am, Jessica calls me Nervous Dan because I'm just so wound up at some points. I have to really severely put on the brakes, really talk to myself. But fear was a big part of my life. I believe fear was actually what led to me getting cancer,
Hmm.
because I couldn't really control all of the fears that I had buried in me. And it was with thanks to my friend who was actually on my first podcast back, my friend Heather Dean, who's a spiritual hypnotherapist from France. By the way, look her up. You want to talk about someone who's funny and comical just like you? She's a piss. And but she actually hypnotized me, put me on the hypnosis, and took me back to that little, very afraid 5, 6, 7-year-old boy who was afraid to die. And that was me. Yeah. But I've
Powerful
always had,
stuff.
yeah. But so cool. So very
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Wow, amazing. So I have another question for you, but before I ask it, tell
Yeah.
everybody where all they can find you. I know you've got a website, a podcast, all of that stuff. Share with
Yeah.
everybody, where is that oneness guy? Where's Danny?
Well, it's easy, folks. Everything can be found, stem from my website, which is my main hub, which is thatonenessguy.com. You'll find everything there from my podcast, blogs, vlogs, my songs, videos. Um, everything is, everything is pretty much right there. And plus, I am on all social media platforms. You just got to look for That Oneness Guy, and then you'll find me. But everything stems from pretty much from the website, That Oneness Guy.
So that's the main place to go to find all
Yes.
things Danny Rongo. And you perform your songs at senior centers, correct? Or at least you used to.
No, yeah, those like shows, which I'm hoping to get back to, as a vocalist, I've been at senior assisted living homes, which I absolutely love. I've been doing them for 5 years, and I can't wait to get back to them. Because you want to talk about gratification, it lifts my spirit because they really don't have much to look forward to at all throughout their day. So when it's entertainment day, they get excited. And I'm looking forward to get back to singing. I'm not there yet. The throat's kind of getting there, but it's going to take a little while before I can sing, Laura. But I'll be back to that.
I'm so happy though that you are kind of on the mend and on the upswing, and that's really made me thrilled to see that.
No, thank you.
As you know, the underlying theme of this podcast is seeking joy in daily living. And so how does the concept of oneness and coming to understand that spiritual side of us, how does that lead to greater peace and joy in someone's life?
Well, honestly, folks, finding joy, if it's not one of your main, aspirations of life, it should be. We should all want to live as joyfully as we can. Our essence, our spirit knows nothing but joy and love. And again, this lifetime takes us away from that for the obvious reasons that we mentioned earlier. But it's part of our core. And an easier way for me has been to celebrate oneness, because once I understood more about that inherent bond, about that inherent connection, again, not just to the physical, but to my spiritual essence, to know that I emanate from a source which is nothing but joy and love. Well, I want to tap into that as often as possible. So when I started to embrace and celebrate oneness more, yes, again, I don't live that, a happy rainbow, unicorn way of life, but I do. Yeah, no one does. But the miserable times, Laura, are so much less for me now, especially dealing what I've been dealing with cancer too. Talk about wanting, to appreciate joyful moments in life. When you're dealing with something as serious as that. Yeah. So learn to celebrate your connection, which will in turn make you appreciate the joy in your life when you encounter it, when you're in an opportunity with family and friends. Like, it means so much more when you understand that these people are vibrating now at the same frequencies that you are, because they love you. Be it your workmates, your family, your friends. When you're around people who vibrate with you, you feel it. It's the energy. But understanding oneness will help us, appreciate that more, which in turn makes us appreciate the joy in life more. Because it's not supposed to be the struggle. Although it is, it's not supposed to be. We're supposed to we're supposed to enjoy as much and love and live and laugh as much as we can, which is why I've always, was so attracted to your moniker when I first saw it some years ago, about joyfulicity. I'm like, wow, someone who wants to celebrate something like that. How cool is that? Right? It's wonderful. So
yeah, I just feel like the world needs so much more of it. Like that was kind of a pandemic driven also. Just everything was gloom and doom and heavy, and that's all real, and you can't ignore it. Yeah. But also joy.
Yeah.
And I feel like we need to reach for as much of that as we possibly can. And you're right, the connections we form with other people is the basis of so much of that.
Yeah. And we always have choices too, Laura. You can always say, hey, listen, you can choose to be a joyful person or not. You can choose to experience and revel in joyful moments in your life or not. It's on you. It's not right or wrong. If you don't want to, that's fine. That's fine. It's your path. It's your journey. Nothing is right or wrong again. Life just is.
It just is.
Life just is. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Well, Danny, thank you so much for being
Oh,
here.
no.
Always enjoy talking with you. And I encourage everybody else out there to go to thatonenessguy.com and check out all the different things that Danny's doing, and go out and buy his book. I'm going to get a copy in about a week, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you, Danny.
Laura,
Have a
thank
good
you so
day,
much for having
everybody.
me.
Thank you for joining me today on the Joyfulicity podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and share, and come follow me on all major social media sites at Joyfulicity or on my website, joyfulicity.com. You can follow the link in the description for this episode to all of the places that we can connect. Have a great day, everybody, and remember, dare to dream, plan to play, live to learn.